Коллеги, доброе утречко.
A very good morning, colleagues.
Нашли время, возможность
Thank you for finding the time
именно сюда.
and the energy
Вы герой. Ну,
to come here at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning.
Владимир Ташкеев меня зовут.
I'm Vladimir Tashkev.
Ограничения, с которыми
We'll talk about the limitations
и самое главное,
that a CISO faces, and importantly, what to do with them. Okay, let's get started. IDDQD.
которая, с одной стороны,
It is a cheat code which has almost become a meme.
понимает, откуда это берется. И
We understand where it's coming from. There's a video game,
наверняка все
Doom, from 1990s.
там, собственно, есть
Everyone knows it.
IDDQD, который
There's a combination of cheat code, IDDQD, which grants invulnerability. And why I'm starting from this slide, there's always
есть куча, но
a challenge.
тут работает, но не всегда.
Because, yes, okay, you have vulnerability, but here it doesn't quite work, there it works, but with limitations, etc. And we might talk about whether or where
Вот сегодняшним днем, кажется,
this comes from.
не та история, которая появилась там, допустим, с каким-то умыслом.
I think that
Понятное дело, что есть какая-то внутриигровая логика, механика.
it's not necessarily that there was some
Где-то ломается.
bad reasoning behind it.
К чему это все? Ну, давайте сейчас игруху оставим в стороне.
Okay, let's leave the video game aside and let's start talking serious things.
Сюда можно было проносить гифки, и я одну пронес.
I
Сработает.
checked that I could implement GIF files in my presentations, and I tried one. Yes, it works.
В сторону больше не
You
возвращаемся.
can see it moves its brows. Okay, good.
Почему? Или зачем?
So why?
У нас есть цели. Неважно, на самом деле, по работе.
What for? We have goals in business or in life,
И все прекрасно, мы движемся.
and things seems to be going well, but
Мало, людей нет.
something is always in the way. You're short of money, or short of people, or you have
Случаются и так далее.
regulators.
Представьте, что
Imagine
в какой-то момент все это раз
that
пропадает.
at some point in time,
Ввели комбинацию,
all of this
его больше нет.
no longer bothers you. You enter a cheat code and there are no limitations. What then?
Ну, так не бывает в жизни. Давайте попробуем.
And you might think that it doesn't happen in life, but let's try and model, let's try and think about it.
Мы почему-то все время, когда что-то
My important premise is that when
проблемы, факторы,
we're not achieving something, we are looking for some external factors, external challenges that prevent us from achieving what we want. Let's try and lift that.
да-да-да. Я сказал,
Where do we start? Okay, I mentioned goals. So what is the goal?
что цель все-таки не допускать инцидентов.
Some say that the goal is to prevent incidents, but I would expand on this.
Дело, что, наверное, там катастрофа не должна случиться, но
Clearly,
не бывают.
a catastrophe is something that we should avoid, but incidents
Деньги, сколько можно? Что такое сколько уверенности, да?
will be happening.
Если что-то произойдет,
So we should have enough resources to give us confidence that if something happens that wouldn't lead to a catastrophe, that would be acceptable, would not stand in the way of our development, will continue to be able to make money. This seems to be quite obvious. And with this in mind, let's start with money. Okay, let's suppose we have unlimited money.
история про то, как люди
Fine, there's a million stories of how people won lotteries and lost
бесполезно.
the money very quickly and very stupidly. But anyway,
Первый вопрос, конечно, бесконечный денег — это вообще что?
the first question,
Было бесконечное денег.
endless money, is exactly what? Well, if we had endless money, then we don't need to be in the business and we don't need to do information security, certainly.
Когда мы говорим бесконечный денег,
So when we say endless money, we're still talking about a particular number. And let's think of a number.
ФНС есть сайт.
The tax authority
Как представляете? На этом сайте
has a website, as you all know. That website
экселевская табличка,
has an Excel spreadsheet that is published on a yearly basis,
рентабельность.
and it shows the profitability of industries. Say there's 100 lines, and the profitability of industries annually, and the average profitability is 6%.
Все, что ко мне пришло,
So what is 6%?
я отдал.
Whatever I get minus whatever I pay,
Есть вот, условно чистый там, вот эта разница, да?
that is
Разница — это
that difference roughly. And that is 6%.
60 рублей заработал,
So you make 106 rubles, you pay 100 rubles to operate.
Вот они 6%.
Okay, and the 6 out of 106 gives you 6%.
6% довольно.
Seems to be quite straightforward. And this is quite
Смотрите, там периоды
a stable number. If you look at various periods, the number fluctuated, but not
больше, но есть и меньше. Да, есть.
by a factor of multiple times.
Наши модельки принять, что это наш предел, верхняя планка.
So give or take,
Никто не даст, потому что
this would be the limit of our model. You wouldn't have more than 6, and if you
для меня история,
start losing money, then perhaps you don't want to be in that business.
да, 6% от оборота.
Okay, so you have your turnover of sales, 6% of your sales.
Закон, да,
I was thinking then about this law about
а вообще говоря,
revenue-based fines.
целевая аудитория это кто?
And I started to think about it in a different angle. Who's the target audience?
Умножаем, ну или делим на 0,97 и получаем вот
And we can divide by 0.97. We can get an interval from 667 million to 1 billion plus. So the lower
667 миллионов.
level would correspond to 667 million, and the upper level will be 16.7 billion, and half a billion would be the maximum fine. So that's our target audience, 3%.
Интервал от 40 до 1 миллиарда.
And if we take 6%, that's 40 to 1 billion. This is our unlimited money.
А в относительных величинах оценки
If you want to talk relative,
текущий ваш бюджет,
let's take your current
умножим его
information security budget. Let's multiply by 10, and that is the unlimited money you would have. You certainly wouldn't have more than that.
давайте играться с ней.
And then you can take any other number and try to play with that.
Всё это
Okay, so what I'm driving at,
бесконечные деньги.
we have our unlimited money, and
Вот
we
у нас не было денег, а
should be
сегодня
happy, it seems. Suppose
на самом деле садимся.
yesterday we didn't have any money, and tomorrow we have a billion, and we sit down and think, how do we spend 1 billion?
Идем, значит, в ближайший магазин, покупаем
We go
самые лучшие, самые
to
средства защиты,
the
притаскиваем.
nearest store, we buy the best security tools,
Никто не дал, да, там люди не появились, непонятно, что с
but then we don't have the resources, we don't have the people, we don't know what to do with that. But we're smart, we don't buy just those tools, but we also buy them with a service
ставить, интегрировать.
to have them installed. And people come in and they install and integrate, etc. Then the next thing we come across is project management.
Проект идет самотеком, ну, высока
So if a project runs on its own, it's
теперь в ограничении,
very probable that it wouldn't
что нам нужно
reach its goals. So the next limitation is that we've got to need our resources to manage people. HR, okay, we have hired people. Our next limit is IT. It turns out the IT is not ready. Any change,
перестроение этого ландшафта,
any reshuffling of the IT landscape, you will appreciate it's a lot of effort. Okay, suppose we address that. Next, we've got to make decisions.
мало того, что надо договориться с ТЭ,
I think you appreciate that.
очевидно, время
You've got to talk to IT, and that would influence on how the company is making money, how the business is making money, the convenience of the use, the interaction, etc. And you've got to make decisions. It's not
допустим, с этим тоже
very quick, and it's not very straightforward. Okay, suppose we address that as well.
много людей.
Then we say we hire a lot of people, but those people have to become a team. They've got to learn how to interact. They've got to understand who's responsible for what. There's got to be seamless integration. And a new issue arises. Time has to pass to achieve that. Okay, so we have addressed all that, and we have
Перестроение,
reached
установку, оно тоже как
all agreements, and we going forward. Time is required for the change or transition, or name it,
вот проблема
whichever name you want.
получили,
So the issue is this. Okay, you've got your unlimited money, and life is great, but for it to work, you would need 12 to 24 months.
что если мы здесь
For some, it's going to be less, for others, it's going to be more.
попадаем. Окей. Давайте вторая история.
Let's now look at another aspect.
Да, давайте здесь послесловие. Да, много денег и мало денег — это почти одно и то же.
And then having
Тем не менее.
little money and having a lot of money
Едем дальше.
looks actually similar. Okay, let's move on.
Тема. Мы начинаем импортозамещаться.
Currently, it is quite popular to say that we'll be doing import substitution, but suddenly it doesn't work quite well. It doesn't either completely work or it works only partially.
Все это наконец заработало.
But suppose all of it works.
и так далее.
everything is comfortable again. We have all the buttons back, and we have 100% effectiveness. Okay, so let's
Процентов на самом деле это что такое? Это
think about it. 100% means
исчерпывающий перечень, например, атак.
that a particular list of attacks, threats, and kill chains is covered
Охватывается действительно со 100%
fully with 100% effectiveness. But it keeps evolving.
матрица.
Today, your Maitri matrix looks one way. In 1 year's time, it would look differently. In 2 years' time, it would look differently still. New vectors will emerge, and some people may also remember AI. Yes, there's a lot of development there, but you've got to
Эффективно, оно может быть
catch up with it.
с какими-то ограничениями
So when we say about 100% effectiveness, there are always limitations about that in a particular context or at a particular point in time.
как рынок развивается.
And you can look at the evolution of the market development
С антивирусами.
to appreciate what I'm talking about. Let's think antivirus. Everyone was running about
Прошлый век всегда.
talking antivirus, and now people say that antivirus is last century. Some say that, okay, EDR is the next big thing.
Да, там от самого простого мы закрываем.
What about the use cases? From a very simple one, we address a very particular TTP to a very large
Не поворачивается язык сказать.
area of security. Then security tools. I don't want to say ecosystem.
Системы, но тем не менее.
If we put several security tools under one umbrella, they are still not an ecosystem. But still, this is developing. And suppose that we have everything we need, we do all the configuration, but in a year's time you need a different configuration. And talking about vulnerabilities and malware, you can't always be sure.
Здесь противоречие.
So 100% security is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms.
Давайте едем дальше.
Okay, so things seem still to be
У
wrong.
нас есть гаечный ключ.
Let's move on. Okay, we say we have a wrench,
Таким образом, чтобы
and we could use it in such a way so that there was no leak in the valve, so that we were never breached, etc. But then suddenly we remember that InfoSec is there
все было абсолютно безопасно. Для того,
not to have everything airtight, but primarily to help business make money. So if we apply extra efforts, then the business has less capability to make money. Yes, that reduces the risk. But when you speak about the risk for the business, the flip side of that,
если мы говорим
a high-risk business should be highly marginal. And if we said that we had a high-risk, high-return business, if we over-applied the range efforts, then the obvious things happens.
давайте, вот опять же искусственный интеллект, да, какая история.
Let's mention AI.
Привлекаем сторонние сервисы.
Okay, we use third-party services, AI-based, etc. Yes, it is linked to risks, but it is also about money. So our goal here is to balance.
Сколько нужно бизнесу.
The answer here would be that we need as much security as the business wants. And how much is that? You'd better go to the business and ask. Okay, let's move on.
Мы говорили, да, у нас эффективные СЗИ. Теперь
We said, or we talked about effective
как такое может быть?
security tools. Let's suppose we have a breach, but there's a zero damage. Well, is zero damage possible?
Такой базовый вариант. Мы нас пробили.
Well, let's imagine that it is possible. We were breached, but we recovered very quickly. We didn't lose any money. The business continuity is there. The business continues to operate. Yes, it is about continuity. It is about the ability to recover.
Значит, быстренько восстанавливаться.
And since we have a cheat code, that means that we recover quickly, instantaneously. But the problem is as follows. If we look at,
Например, с атакой шифровальщика.
say, 2025 encryptor attack, it's not that our service has crashed. It's just that our backups were encrypted, and also the hypervisor was encrypted, and something goes wrong, and we are not confident that all other infrastructure is not compromised. And when we try to recover, it turns out that we don't have
Примеров
anything to recover to, and we don't have the data. I think examples are clear, including from media reports, that, things happen.
можно говорить про киберустойчивость.
Okay, and we can speak about cyber resilience.
Является целью
We can say that a prevention of incidents is not always a goal.
тоже, но тем не менее факт остается фактом. Едем дальше.
Moving on.
Всегда мы говорим про что? Что все очень прекрасно, люди, нам нужны люди.
But then again, we
Ну и, конечно,
say that
неожиданно
we also need people, and suddenly the people are not there.
И вот случается чудо, и рынок оживает.
And let's suppose there's a miracle. The labor market
Много,
is suddenly
по адекватной цене найти того, кому нам нужно.
able to supply what we need at the right price. And importantly, those people would be super motivated,
Ну, и, собственно, то, что нужно.
super capable to learn new competences. So
Нанимаемых
let's say that it goes beyond our dreams.
левела по
We
компетенциям.
hire them, but then suddenly it turns out that they are not the right level of competence.
Перемещаемся от внешнего контекста
Why?
к внутренней. Проблема в том,
If we switch from the external context again to the external one, then often, or in fact never, we
есть человек,
don't know who are the people that we need. If we put a person to a certain
человек
job,
должен заниматься, что
and we hope that the person would find their way around, that they would get to know the right people,
нам пользу.
and that they would be useful to us. Yes, that is so.
Что есть
And some may say that there's the onboarding procedure. Well, not all companies have it, but many have it.
реальная история,
But I'm talking about a bigger thing,
у нас
that
нет выхода. Учить постоянно.
we have no choice but to provide continuous
И вот дальше
training
вопрос, чему?
to everyone. But questions remains, to teach them what?
Каждого направления, вообще говоря,
To train them in what?
как выглядит вот это
Ideally, we want to understand for every
моделью компетенции.
position what the development track looks like. We could call it a competence model, we can call it a
Да, то есть, когда мы
training
у нас
track
человек
or path.
должен крутить какую-то
The
схему,
essence is the same.
сразу возникает,
When we say that a person should be responsible for a particular security tool,
должен уметь
then
крутить, а еще раз
it turns out that the person should know about the landscape and they should have some soft skills. They should be able to talk to people and communicate with people, and they need to have some side knowledge and how much of that they need and in what areas they need.
моя боль. И
It is my personal pain, I must admit.
сам руководителем
As a manager myself,
проблема.
I can feel it very
В момент времени должны примерно понимать
Much.
ожидания от людей,
At every point in time, we've got to understand what we expect of our people
куда они могут расти, как выглядит
at their current job, how they can grow, how would this path look like.
HR.
And you could say, well, isn't this
HR не решает, только мы решаем.
HR's concern? Well, not quite. The HR
Едем дальше.
doesn't make the decision. We make the decision. Okay, moving on.
Регуляторы.
Regulators.
Регуляторы там,
Everyone says, okay, regulators are in the way. We have revenue-based fines. Okay, let's speculate about this as well.
никаких ограничений.
Imagine there are no limitations. Okay, what changes?
В 21-м приказе в СТЭКа больше не написано, что
In the Federal State Export Controls Decree number 21, say it no longer says that you need an antivirus. Does that mean you wouldn't need an antivirus? Or wouldn't you use security tools simply because they are in the rules? Well, we've got to understand that compliance is lagging behind, and the market is developing, the maturity level goes higher, and compliance with time matches it. And it may happen once every 5 years, or it may happen year in, year out, but the essence is the same. The maturity of the market increases, and then the regulator raises the bar. It often happens like this.
что сейчас все ограничения отменились,
So when we say that
ничего не поменялось.
all limitations are lifted, what would change? Nothing would change.
Уже
We have agreed that we have security tools 100% effective, we have millions and billions of money. What else do we need? Yes, we need to fill in some spreadsheets, we need to engage in empty
и так далее.
discussions about what critical infrastructure is.
То можно действительно закрыть деньгами, ресурсами и так
But
далее.
it seems that this part can be addressed with money or resources,
И вообще отдать это
or
кому-нибудь.
to give it to someone else, in fact, to outsource it.
IDC, если не ошибаюсь, или Форестер подсказывает, что с 26 года чуть ли не треть
And
compliance, вообще говоря,
I think either IDC or Forrester says that
будет закрывать.
in 2026, 1/3 of companies
Скидывая его просто на аутсорс.
would outsource their compliance. All the reporting tables, the documents that distract you from your core business, well, just outsource it. Isn't it lovely? Let's move on.
Вот, и тут мы, собственно, добираемся до истории, которая касается нас самих. Да, все
And here we
ограничения внешние.
come to ourselves. We kept talking about external limitations. Let's
Вот эти
now do some introspection
И
and try to look at our own home, at our own walls. And what do we see?
нужно ли вообще что-то?
And
Нужно ли вообще нам?
question arises,
Нужна ли нам вообще помощь какая-то? Да, нужен
do we need
действительно чит-код или
any help? Do we need any cheat code?
минимум разрешить?
Or can we
Просто один за другим.
address all these problems ourselves?
История с деньгами.
Let's look at them one by one. Let's take money first. Okay, we said that if there's no money, it's bad. If you have too much money, well, it's not good either,
Цель достигаем все равно очень медленно. Значит,
because we'll still be slow to reach our goal. So what do we need to do? We've got to negotiate. We've got to grow gradually.
двигаться поступательно и
We've got to move incrementally.
исключительно про переговоры.
And then it
Ровно про переговоры.
turns out to be a matter of negotiations.
Все равно этот план будете обсуждать, к чему-то привязывать.
Because if you think planning, you would still need to negotiate and discuss those plans. You need to provide arguments, etc.
Да, наверное,
Yes, so negotiation skills. Quite tough,
мы вытянем хотя бы ноги в это
not
направление. Это прям вообще
awfully quick. But if we
следующая история. Про
look in that direction, we're going to achieve awesome
там чего-то не закрывать,
results.
не дотягивать,
Security tools. Yes, every security tool standalone
построить
falls short, but our
почку, модель,
aim is to
да,
build
систему, если хотите,
a comprehensive system, if you will, out of those individual tools.
советчиков, книг мудрости.
And there are many options to turn to, many advisors, many books. You could look at zero trust. You could
Можно
build
продвигать
kill chains using matrices. You can use scenario analysis,
события
unacceptable events,
и так далее. И, собственно, точечно закрывать то, что самое важное.
and focus on the most critical things. You can do all that. Nothing prevents you.
Говорили про, допустим,
Next,
ИТ, да?
we talked about IT.
То же самое. Переговоры,
Same thing.
партнерские отношения.
Negotiations, partnership.
На самом деле, тонкий такой момент. Если мы
And a fine point here.
какую-нибудь умную книжку про
If we
внутреннего контроля, то
look up some smart book on
там, 3 уровня
systems and controls, you would see there are 3 levels of defense. And information security
уровню и
is normally level 2 or tier 2, sets the rules
соблюдались.
and makes sure that the rules are observed.
Здесь стереть границу между первым и
So as long as we try to remove the boundary between tier 1 and tier 2, yes, there might be an issue that we as InfoSec
но мы так
start to be a responsibility about what's happening in IT, but we'll be quicker in achieving our goals like this rather than standing aside.
хочу, не могу слово подобрать.
And I'm looking for a word.
Мы пишем служебные записки,
Well, we write office memos,
требуем что-то выполнить, и
We-
не вмешиваемся, толку с этого не очень много.
produce our demands, but we're not really get involved. It doesn't work very well. Okay, moving on. People.
Рынок мертв.
Well, the market is
Там, на самом деле попытаться
Sulking.
обойти и это,
But-
и растить молодых специалистов.
we can find a workaround. We can grow our talent
Нюанс первый в том, что молодых
from
специалистов
when they're young.
найти, в отличие от... Но
The good thing is that young
опираемся
experts
на внутренние ограничения.
are possible to find.
Например, в HR.
But then again, we come across internal limitations, say HR. Imagine you hire
Начинающего специалиста с горящими глазами,
a junior expert
супер мотивацией и так далее,
with
звезда.
a lot of enthusiasm, a star professional,
Смотрели, убедились,
and he's been around for 12 months, and you see that they are good,
надо бы, наверное, и жалование поднимать.
and
И тут, собственно,
perhaps you should give them a pay rise.
ходите в HR,
And here's what
надо
happens.
поднимать.
You
Вот смотрите,
come to HR and ask them for a pay rise. And HR tells you, okay, last year inflation was 10%.
поднять на 12.
You can give them a pay rise of 12%.
Ну, дальше понятно, что происходит.
That's a king's offer for you.
Ходят.
Okay, and then a clear thing happens. The person just
Начинаете в эту игру играть,
leaves.
вы не можете, не имеете права остановиться.
And if you start playing this game,
У вас
you can't stop.
выстроиться, лестница, конвейер.
You should have
То есть у вас всегда
a pipeline. Call it whatever you want.
к постоянному поиску, к постоянному обучению.
It's about
На
continuous
самом деле это все происходит с конверсией, потому что все равно есть
recruitment,
только людей, ничего с ним не сделать.
continuous training, etc. There should be a pipeline.
Надо быть готовым.
And
Мы должны
this is something that you simply have to accept. We've got to reorganize ourselves, we've got to talk to HR, and then it's going to work. What else do we have?
Регулятор.
Regulator.
Я считаю, что регулятор нам на самом деле помогает.
I think that the regulator is more helping us than standing in the way.
Требования — это прям прекрасный
Why?
способ.
Because we keep talking about money, but regulatory requirements are a good argument to sell a budget increase. And in this aspect, they are certainly on our side. Yes, sadly, there are some forms to be filled and there are some limitations, but it seems that they bring more benefits than they do harm.
Как только мы говорим про то, что мы что-то пытаемся поделать, схитрить, обойти и так далее,
And when we think about
вспоминать про то, что
cutting corners, finding workarounds, we start remembering things such as a governance system, and we start thinking that maybe we should really
ну, вот 3 тезиса я на самом деле сюда вынес.
look into that.
Есть какая-то основа, которой вы можете приделывать определенные элементы.
And essentially, you have some basis
Понимать,
to which
что важно для компании.
you can connect
Что вы делаете, связано с
extra elements.
способом компании зарабатывать деньги.
You have an understanding of how what you do connects with how the company makes money, and you have management support.
Кто тоже ставит сложные пароли. Ну, наверное, про это тоже, но
And management support is not about managers asking employees to create
просто абстрактное. А вы
good passwords,
конкретно договорились,
although it's that as well. But it's about support in the form of resources, whatever resources you need, whether money or staff or the resources of other teams.
и вот здесь, когда мы говорим про систему менеджмента или там про систему управления,
And as we talk about a governance system,
книжек-то умных написано много.
what we're really talking about is that
127.201.
there are a lot of smart books. You can take ISO 27,
Берем
and it's 200 pages. You take a NIST document, it's the same, and people start reading it. They open 27001, and they read to page, say, 27, and it says, developer policy. Okay, good, very clear. We drop everything and we write a policy.
понимаете, да? То есть люди
You see what I'm
воспринимать это
driving at? So people start
к действию,
really seeing this as a manual, as an operating manual.
делать как написано.
They start following it as a checklist, and it doesn't work, and people get disappointed. They say, those are stupid books, and throw them away.
Вопрос, допустим, проблема в книжках. А что тогда мы ожидаем в книжках увидеть?
Okay, we can say that the problem is in the books, but what were we expecting to see in the books? You may be surprised, but in 2022, 23,
Кто пилит свои фреймворки?
up until now,
Кибербезу.
quite a lot of people develop their own frameworks in cybersecurity.
Ну, несколько
I can give you a few examples off the top of my head.
совершенно разные, на самом деле, компании. Вендор,
Very different companies, vendors, integrators,
казалось бы, ничем не связанные, но, тем не менее, каждый что-то предлагает. Почему?
are
Потому что
developing their own solutions.
да, универсальные книжки слишком универсальны.
Why? Because the books are too
Абстрактные.
general, too abstract,
Ну и вот мы,
and you've got to have something more specific.
да, я подготовил чек-лист. Можно
And
фотографировать.
I have developed a checklist for you. You can take a snapshot of it. If you have a book that addresses all these, then you are covered. If you don't have a book,
Из этих кубиков
then you've got to use these building blocks, and you should be good.
конкретики. Мы открываем какую-нибудь умную книгу.
Okay, let's get more specific. So we open a good book and we learn about remote work and managing remote mobile devices. So you need to determine the policy to consider the risks related to this and that and so forth. It's not that specific, it's not that clear.
Эта история.
But if we kind of
Когда у меня есть, допустим, генеральный директор, у которого есть
change it for
и
a specific situation, I have a CEO who has a personal MacBook and he wants to read corporate email and we need to make it secure, then it's a specific example. Okay, another example.
не миллион, сотни, да?
So we have
Мер защиты,
hundreds of measures
защиты.
for security. The market of ISS
Понять все-таки,
is quite broad, and you can add some services to that. And then the question comes, what relates to a given level of maturity? So a good framework should answer this question. So we have some ready solutions answering this question, and so on.
должны понимать, что важно для компании. вновь, да, можем называть это любыми словами, но нам нужно
Well,
понимать,
we should understand what is important for the company. So we should understand what might go wrong such a way that the company won't be able to make more money. This might be called a risk profile, a risk map, or unacceptable events, whatever. So the idea is that we should connect the way of making money to our understanding of what could go wrong and what to do about it. So we start with what to protect, then from what, and only then how we protect.
конечного результата.
So then we should have some kind of the target result image.
Ну, нам надо понять,
So when we talk about planning, we should understand where we want to be in a year, 2 or 3.
ну,
And
если это
if
направление, окей,
we have some kind of overall
если у нас
direction with some assumptions, that's fine. If we don't have anything,
проблема,
well, this becomes a problem. We don't know
коллеги, но
where we are going. Well, this kind of looks obvious, but anyway.
ну, теперь уже
Well, talking about money.
бесконечное количество,
So we are now counting our money.
не все,
It's not an endless
не все
cashback anymore. So then we understand that not everything we would love to buy
эта история про
can return well
Богу, да, 2020
its investment. We're talking about risks. So in 2025, people can quantify risks in rubles, in rupees, or in any other way.
можем сравнить.
So now we can compare things.
Так, что у нас осталось? Рынок, да? Рынок.
Okay, the market.
Понятная история абсолютно. Мы должны
This is really clear.
компетенции.
We should understand that we have competencies.
То, как мы
So we are talking about our way of managing our staff. I mean, us in the cybersecurity field. Not HR overall, but it's us specifically. So what we do, what we want to achieve, and so on. Some
когда мы говорим про
metrics. When we talk about metrics and indicators,
закатанных глаз,
then people kind of start rolling their eyes because it's always abstract, non-specific, some metrics, some indicators showing things,
ведем.
and so on and so forth.
Давайте
Okay, let's simplify it as much as we can.
тем
Okay,
средства меры защиты.
my kind of number one metrics. Who calculates metrics related to the coverage by ISS scanners, antiviruses, ADRs, SOC, and so on? They all have their coverage, but not everybody kind of estimates it.
Все прекрасно.
And last but not least, we have discussed things. So we have some documents, we add some policies,
И так далее.
we have some ISS installed.
Работает или нет?
Okay, does it work?
И практически
That's the question.
она совершенно точно
And
необходима.
well, the practical
Просто в каком виде?
kind of
Пентест или,
view of this is really important. Do we need pen tests or red teaming, maybe cyber
отдельности или все
exercises or bug bounty? But we should have these things either independently or collectively. It's the only way to understand whether it works or not.
Да, я сказал, что многие начали такие фреймворки
Well,
делать.
many are now making these frameworks, but you don't necessarily have to wait. So if we look at all these CIS-18 and FAIRs and so on, if we look at this as some building blocks for
Колесико
us to play with, like building blocks and wheels and so on, then, well, similarly, we don't have any obstacles. So the important thing is that you should wish to do something. When there is a wish, there is a way.
Вывод это
And this brings us to our conclusions. And they are kind of self-explanatory, aren't they?
чем ближе мы к тому, что происходит
So the closer we are to the things going on inside the company or inside of us, the stronger the limitations.
в наших силах,
And conversely,
все поменять.
it's up to us to change everything. We can do it.
Если не поменять, то точно
Why
попробовать.
not? At least we can try.
Ну, другие очевидные тезисы про то, что не обязательно идти сквозь стену.
Well, you don't have to break through the wall. You might walk around it. We should try planning. Well, it looks obvious, but indeed it's not a way of life for everyone.
У нас всегда
So
есть
if we do things,
из чего собрать.
we should have some kind of building blocks, some ready solutions, and they are plentiful. Just get them and start building.
Ну, собственно, и все.
And that's
О
it.
чем я здесь скажу?
And the final thing I'm going to mention,
Вся вот эта история про ограничения, она,
All these things about
ну, например, лично я достиг просветления,
constraints
пытаюсь там поделиться.
is not like me being enlightened and I'm trying to share it with you. No, this is my pain. I have the same problems. I have bottlenecks. I have some walls to bang my head
Но это я делюсь с вами одновременной болью.
against. So I'm sharing with you some pain and some ways to overcome this. So this is true for me personally. So on Monday, I will start my day by thinking about this. And you're welcome to follow suit. Thank you very much, colleagues.